Hello, this is Retro Workshop, and here's my unboxing and review of the Super Nintendo and the complete boxed games I have thus far. On screen you can see the two complete boxed games I have, along with the loose game, The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, and they also have the protective cases. The Super Nintendo itself is a standard PAL version, which has yellowed a bit and must have been quite heavily used from the 1990s onwards. This is reflected in the heavily used controller. It's not mine, I should note. I bought it in this condition not long ago. It came with the wires and official Nintendo power cable and one official controller. You can see it's the PAL version because of the coloured buttons on the controller, the more rounded design, the button layout is also different on the console, and the grey colour scheme is different. I did test it and it seems to work perfectly on my old HD TV. It works in full colour and sound on my old HD TV by using a SCART connector, the box with the pins. You plug the wires into that being the RCA wires, yellow, red and white. Of course the two games were pretty much full price, so deals wise for this I paid a good amount for it all, which I'm happy with, since these two games are from my childhood and some of the greatest games ever made and best-selling games on the Super Nintendo, along with of course A Link to the Past, which was also a pretty normal price for a fairly damaged loose cart, but again I'm happy with this, since the console itself was pretty cheap, and it must be the single greatest retro console of all time, pre-2000s, and without question the greatest 2D console of all time. This is reflected not just in its simplicity, great hardware and sound, and high amount of memory compared to most of its competitors, and its remarkable controller, but most importantly the gameplay and game library. The system plays very well and has one of the greatest and largest games libraries of all time, beating almost every retro console and many of the modern consoles as well, that being over 1,700 games. Now here you can see the unboxed games. The instructions are not great, but the boxes are in okay condition, and the game labels are in perfect condition, other than the Zelda label, which is a little damaged. Either way, I'm happy with this, and if you're going to start a Super Nintendo collection, then these three games are a great starting point. Of course, the Super Nintendo cartridges are classics, like the NES and N64. They also last a very long time, and have fewer issues compared to the PlayStation 1, for example. The game boxes also came in full colour, paper boxes, with amazing artwork, which I love just as much as any other library, for either plastic or paper. The Super Nintendo has some of the greatest and most groundbreaking video games ever created, either invented, overseen or popularised by Nintendo, such as Donkey Kong Country, Street Fighter and The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, but also the likes of Super Mario World 1 and 2, Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3, Super Mario Kart, Final Fantasy 5 and 6, Killer Instinct, Dragon Quest 5 and 6, Super Mario RPG, Chrono Trigger, Secret of Mana, and Super Metroid. It has countless more games than this, over 1,700, one of the largest and greatest in the world, and a good amount of them are at least playable, if not good games, unlike many other consoles. The Super Nintendo is also one of the most groundbreaking and best-selling consoles of not just the retro era, but the modern era as well, having sold over 50 million units. It is within the top 10 best-selling home consoles of all time, and the third best-selling home console released before the year 2000. The controller is one of the most iconic and advanced in history, having invented both the 4-button layout and the bumpers/trigger buttons, which then became universal, making it truly the first modern controller, and it started its life half a decade before the PlayStation. And to this day, it's still one of the greatest controllers ever made. They simply got it right with the Super Nintendo. Over 50 Super Nintendo games sold 1 million copies or more, and some of the greatest and best-selling video game franchises were spawned on the system, such as Donkey Kong Country, Super Mario World, Super Mario Kart, and others. And many of the greatest and best-selling franchises were continued on this system, such as The Legend of Zelda, Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Kirby, Metroid, and Mega Man. There are also many slightly lesser-known series/games on the system, such as Super Ghouls and Ghosts, Final Fight 2, Mortal Kombat 3, Super Castlevania 4, Super Bomberman, Contra 3, Earthbound, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Gradius 3, SimCity, Super Star Wars, Earthworm Jim, Demon's Crest, Breath of Fire 2, and many more. If all of that's not enough, you can go through the library and literally find 200 random games you may enjoy, and the library has over 60 film-based titles, from Batman and Alien to Home Alone and The Addams Family. Some others include Toy Story, Star Wars, RoboCop, Wayne's World, The Mask, Jurassic Park, Hook, Indiana Jones and Terminator, and it has many intellectual property and comic book based games. In total it has just as many, if not more, licensed titles than any other console, which is wonderful if you're a cinephile like me. I will give individual reviews of the Super Nintendo games in separate videos. So that is all for this video. I have been Retro Workshop and you have been watching my Super Nintendo console review and unboxing of my Super Nintendo games. Thank you.